permits or else to issue them, if at all possible.
Yeah. See, what we've done here is to hold water on site. When we first started, there was no, had been eaten down with clay in part 10 by a storm sewer, which has since been rerouted. An 18-inch pipe came into a 15-inch pipe. The 15-inch pipe discharged here, and you see where that is, that little bump of a little bank there that sticks out into the water. Down there is a concrete spillway, which had, as far as we can tell, about 3 feet clear. And the pipe discharged onto that concrete spillway. Some 80 or more feet of the pipe had fallen out over the years. The city engineer estimated that in that ravine up there, at least 500 cubic yards of soil was there. There was a retaining wall collapsed, and you can see from the height of the concrete slab and the retaining wall how much higher it is at one point. Over here is about a foot down or so is pipe that was in the original middle of the creek. And there was a bank that came up like this. And as the straight shot of water came down, it had undermined, it eaten a straight channel. This used to be a meandering that's right. And in 1988, after the city rerouted this water, so that we were left with, we've had wet weather recently, you'll notice this. This is as much water that comes through on normal conditions, and it gets much drier. It goes down. In very rainy weather, when it rains heavily, the water will fill from here to there, and that's it. And there's a lot more water coming down here. So, in 1988, with the approval of the city engineer's office, a young man named Ron Barlow, we undertook to begin restoring. We didn't want to talk to Ron Barlow. We began restoring some of the contours and doing what we could to provide habitat for plants and animals. There'll be a very heavy flow of water, and very heavy rains when there'll be a new plume of sand and clay that washes down. My wife says that when you spoke to her on the phone, you spoke of removing pools, and I don't quite know what you mean by removing, or what you mean by pools. So,
well, seems to me this is functioning as a pediment structure, forming these pools.
By you mean this down here is a pool?
Yeah. And that up there.
Yeah. Does DER have anything against holding water on property like this?
Not necessarily, but
okay.
We would like to review any activities that take place in water. And I have to tell you that as part of that review activity, adjacent property owners are contacted so that they can have their say so. That's why the process is in place.
And I think the adjacent property owners should have their say so. Well, before I began this process, I spoke to all of the adjacent property owners and got their permission to make the changes, make the improvements that I made. The particular response I got from Pelton is that they have not been down here. Peltons have never seen this. Even Silver's property didn't even know this. It was the estate clean. In any case, we have a new property owner who was contacted, and when we bought the property, we expected bucks. Can I document that? No, this wasn't true. Children would have been in danger, were in danger anyway with the collapsing banks, the steep collapsing banks.
Well, children can be endangered a lot of ways. We all know that.
But I would think that's a separate matter. That is, if there is this review process in which the neighbors are asked to comment, fine. And if one neighbor believes that any amount of water endangers children, well, that's hard to deal. That's a separate matter, and that may be a civil matter. But believe me, before we started, there were scooped out places where a child could slip in on clay, steep banks, and fall in. There was a pothole at least 8 feet deep where the storm sewer dropped in. I fell into that damn thing and had clay sides. So, I mean, you go on the other side of 8th Avenue, there are deep pools that have been eaten out. And part of the review process might be to take a look at the water coming through the pipe on 8th Avenue and what happens downstream from that pipe. There is a very, very deep channel with literally perpendicular walls cut in clay and hardpan. In places where there are pools much deeper than these. Anyway, I'm talking too much. And I would hope that in your review process you look at the quality of the water that is here now, as opposed to water in other runoff channels like this where not plants, not fish, not snails. Water quality, plant possibilities for plants, and so on. I was getting ready to plant water lilies up there. Now, the thing that I think Chris Bird, my neighbor, was most concerned about, and after he's been here a year and a half or so, he has never said anything to me about what is down here. He came down with me soon after he moved in. He walked over with me. I explained what I had done and was in the process of doing, and he never spoke to me about it again. Now, he noticed some chunks of concrete, clean concrete, in the water, and that's what I think got him upset. Do you all have, within the permitting process, is the placement of concrete in water to provide riprap or an underlayment for other things? Is that illegal?
It's illegal without a permit, yes.
Without a permit.
Now the material itself is not, as long as it's not soluble in water, we don't have a problem with it. Concrete's fine. If it's limestone, of course, is better aesthetically.
Aesthetically. Well, if you step over here a minute. Does the permitting process, well, you can't see any concrete except in a channel to keep the water from washing out the trees. We have some pieces of limestone which had settled over a period of months, and then there's grouting between them. Keep up and washing out.
Generally, riprap structures don't grout.
Yeah.
We like riprap structures right down there.
Well, that was my thought over here with chunks of concrete under big rocks like this at the back. So we had a bank there. When we came, we looked up. We literally looked up to see this dry sand. Even when it didn't rain, sand was just dribbling down into the creek system because roots had died and so on. And this is silted in. Before Chris Bird came, one of one of the first places where we were controlling the washout of sediment before the city rerouted its water was down here, and the sand filled in a channel down there, and the level rose. So we would like eventually to be able to have more rocks on the bank. Soon after
That stuff is terrible. Both of those species are exotic.
If you look over there,
that's bad stuff. He's indicating that he thinks he owns to the middle of the creek.
Well, he does. But his property comes down to the other side of this ironwood tree. I would say roughly, you see the palmetto? About 2 or 3 feet beyond the palmetto. Now, the middle of the creek is actually, we can show you on the survey maps and the old diagrams of the city sewer system. The middle of the creek historically came through a clay tile in a concrete retaining wall, because it was a water garden for years ago. And the storm sewer line was several feet north of the creek line. So what happened up there, where you have the widest open water, is the place where the storm sewer line is coming down from 17th Street, and the creek is coming from up there. And Chris Bird's property comes down into that area, and I have not affected.
Well, you can see though that the state would be unable to permit you to do something that is on someone else's property.
I understand.
You have to be the property owner.
Now, at this point, we may have to go through some, I assume, some permit process to remove sand from his property. For instance, if he wishes us to lower the water level to the point it was when he bought the property, the water level here, a water level which was a result of activities I undertook with the permission of the Suskies who owned the property until first. All the activities here downstream and upstream at this point were done with permission of property owners. Now,
what I suggest we do is get together a consent order, legal document between you and we, the state, which will essentially say that you're required to apply for a permit with X amount of time. If the permit is granted, then you keep what you've got. If not, then X amount of time you'll have to remove it.
What does remove mean? Physically?
Take anything out that you put in.
And how are you going to determine that?
Determine what?
What we put in.
Well, it seems to be fairly obvious.
Well, the state's going to make that determination, right?
Well, if you have photographs, pre-existing photographs, then that would be a
Will you expect us to provide you with the information so that you
Absolutely.
can do enforcement action against us?
Absolutely.
Well,
Now, wait. Let me ask you a question.
Certainly, that's
For instance,
common. If somebody says that they had a previously existing dock, and that what they're really doing is rebuilding it, they have to prove they had a pre-existing dock, not us.
Okay, well,
Same thing.
Let me ask a question.
no, you have asked a lot of questions.
You asked a
What I
question,
would
then I
like,
want to ask
what
a
I
question.
would like to know is, um, what is the permitting procedure for restoration projects, and what is the process for acquiring funding, grant funding, to assist with restoration
For
projects?
private property, there wouldn't be such.
Well,
If it's in the public, if it's clearly in the public interest and it's a public facility, i.e. boat ramp, public dock, something like that, then you might could get.
okay, well, what about would it be possible for the city of Gainesville, since it's their utility easement which eroded this area, for them to apply for a grant in order to compensate us for the expense of restoring the environment?
Who knows? You know, they got this greenway deal going with all these creeks.
No, I'm talking
we're
about
working under the
yeah,
provisions
but
of
we're
that.
talking about the DER monies that are outlined in Chapter
Pollution
403.
recovery funds.
No, I'm talking about restoration program.
Never seen it happen.
You've never seen it happen?
Never seen it happen.
But it is
Public
indicate-
projects, yes.
Okay, I read the statute. It didn't indicate to me that there was a differentiation between public and
Definitely,
private.
always
My
is.
wife's
In any of the criteria, there's always one of the 7 outstanding Florida waters. For instance, 7 criteria is that any activity be clearly in the public interest.
Yeah, but in the public interest doesn't necessarily mean public lands.
No, it doesn't.
See, I mean, the public interest in restoring the environment and
Well-
creating a habitat for plants and wildlife.
Well,
Given
you
that the
could-
public interest was served by a storm sewer draining through here for 40 years, and that the public the public got to discharge water, newspapers, cans, bottles. We took out bushels of trash after every storm. In addition to the stuff that, you know, when we bought this property, there were many years of neglect, and there was bicycle parts, batteries, there were tires.
I've
along
seen
here.
it, all
Yeah.
these creeks.
Now, we inherited the consequences of a public of a public
Utility.
use. Now, if we are required to, say, remove these pieces of limestone from the creek, how far back do they go? 6 inches? I mean, the creek is half an inch deep and 6 inches
Anything
wide.
that you put in will have to come out.
Come out of the creek.
Right.
But how far?
Have to come out of our jurisdiction.
Oh, and where does your jurisdiction stop?
Jurisdiction here, I'll flip around.
I mean, is it the watershed?
It's determined by plant species. That
Ah.
portion of the shoreline that's capable of supporting water-dependent vegetation.
And the fact that we brought in the water-dependent vegetation, how is
created
that
the
accounted
shoreline.
for?
Natural vegetation.
No, but everything that's here we brought in.
Oh,
There was no,
These trees and
except for
all?
the
No.
except for the tall trees, there was no, and
well,
the
that's what we look
palmetto.
at first is the canopy.
Okay, because there
The
was
canopy.
there was more canopy, except the trees kept falling down because of the erosion. You see, so
For
that's why you
instance,
have this big opening here.
There was right up here a huge sweet bay, the roots of which had died. Most of them had died off because it was now some 8 feet above the bottom of the creek. Stuff had eroded out from under it. One day it fell all the way along the creek system. We lost a huge sweet gum. There were other sweet gums that were already down when we bought this property. That is, because of the erosion here, the banks were constantly washing out. Large trees were coming down.
We understand that. All we ask is that you apply for a permit to save these things so that we can review
Yep.
what you're going to do.
Now,
I mean, another person could just as easily done this with creosote logs or anything else.
At the time, but we didn't. At
No,
the
you
time,
didn't, but you
at
can
the
understand
Yeah, I
why
understand.
we have to have the review process.
But what we have here is a fait accompli. We went to the city of Gainesville under the Creek Ordinance, and we did what was there, that the city would permit private property owners to make corrections to repair problems, and we did. We went and talked to each of our neighbors. the Leightonans, the Felsteins, the Suskies. The gentleman up here, Phil Stern, knew what we were doing,
Well, and the Coffrans.
and the Coffrans. Anyway, what we did without awareness of the DER's desire to permit this process. The amount of water coming through here.
Glad to hear that DER is into permitting restoration projects as opposed to just issuing pollution permits. Because I've been, 15 years ago I was agitating with the DER to have them do something more positive rather than just determine how much pollution they were willing to countenance. So I'm quite happy to hear that you all have a permitting process for restoration of the environment.
Well,
and I'm hoping that you also have some
that's
funding available.
That's your contention, that it's a restoration of the environment.
Oh,
you
I
mean what
see.
we've done?
Oh, so
Yes.
that is.
Okay.
That's your contention.
And you don't buy that.
I
that's
either
a
buy it or don't buy it. It's not up
I
to
see.
me to buy it.
Yeah.
Oh, so who is it up
It'll
to?
be up to the permitting staff in Jacksonville to
I see.
determine that.
Is that Ernie Fry?
Yeah, ultimately,
Okay.
Mike
before-
Eaton's the head of the permitting section over there. They'll send someone out. When you enter the permit, they'll send someone out. There'll be a written report done, photographs, the whole works. Decision will be made. If, and it seems like this is if, it's denied, then you have the right to go to administrative hearing before a hearing officer. You can put in all of this input that you've been giving me during the permitting process, and if it is permitted, that will be that. If it's not, then you go before a hearing. You would go before a hearing officer and put all these arguments to that person.
What are the criteria for defining a restoration project?
I have no idea.
I see.
I'm
Where
an enforcement and compliance
Well, but
person.
you
I
must
have very
you must
nothing to
know
do.
what the criteria are that you're going to issue a finding on. That
No,
there's
I
a
don't
permit.
issue anything. I have nothing whatsoever
Okay, so
to
what are
do
you
with
gonna
the
do?
permitting process.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to handle the enforcement end of
And
it.
how do you do that?
Well, if you agree to enter the consent order and
You
go
have
through
to see it first.
go through the permit, well, essentially we're
Yeah.
trying to agree on that before I write it up.
Yeah.
I've essentially told you. They'll say we can agree. Within 30 days of issuance of this notice, you will apply for a permit.
Okay,
Within-
but I still have a problem with applying. I don't know what kind of a permit we're going to apply for.
Dredge and fill, short form dredge and fill permit.
Okay, so we have not done any dredging.
You've done filling. It's all the same permit.
We've not done any filling in the creek.
Absolutely.
No,
Okay.
no. The water, the amount of
Okay.
creek
Well,
things.
here's the
we
other
haven't
side
done
of it.
any.
The other
Okay.
side of it now is, if we don't do that,
Uh-huh.
then I'm gonna go back to the office and issue a notice of violation, and then you can hire yourself a lawyer, and your lawyer can battle our lawyers.
Okay, well, I don't
And
know.
they'll go on. I'll guarantee
Why
you it'll
do
go
we
on
have
for
to
years
hire a
and years.
lawyer?
Well, you don't. You can fight. You can deal with our lawyers if you want to.
Okay,
Face to
and
face,
on
any
what
way you want it.
basis? On what basis would you issue a notice of violation?
Because I've determined that a filling violation has occurred
On what basis?
on the basis of my experience.
With what? I mean,
What do you mean
and
with
how? What specific things are you going to base your determination that there has been filling on, other than what hearsay from the neighbors and what we might have told you?
Well, clearly that's a man-made structure. Right
What
up
is a
there,
man-made
and so is
structure?
this. That wall up there. It's in our jurisdiction. Clearly.
No, that wall is not in the creek.
It's within our jurisdiction.
The
Which is
jurisdiction
not
determined by the
definitely
county.
not the water, it's the landward extent of waters of
As
the state.
defined by the
As
plants,
defined by the vegetation.
which we brought in.
You didn't bring in this red maple tree here. You didn't bring
Well-
in these blue beeches. They're on our list.
That
We have a
wall,
total
however,
list.
okay,
It
that
tells-
wall doesn't have anything to do with your blue beach.
It's in our jurisdiction.
But that wall is not within the
Well, hey,
confines
look,
of the
well, you can
creek.
stand here and you can play your little game all day long if you want to. Now, I'm offering you a choice. Either way, you want to go.
I have a difficulty with choices that are penalty related when all we have attempted to do was to improve the environment.
Well, that's your contention. What you call improving the environment, the state may not call improving the environment.
Okay, and what I would ask for are the specific criteria on which you might base the determination that the environment has not been improved.
If you've read the statutes that I gave you the other day, it'll tell you that any activity in, over, or on waters of the state requires permitting.
Well, actually, there are exemptions for mosquito control facilities.
Yes, there are.
And this is a mosquito control facility.
It is?
Oh, yes.
An approved mosquito control facility.
According to the city engineer, yes.
Yeah.
See if you can find mosquito larvae.
Well,
We have mosquito fish.
I mean, definitely, the city engineer was quite cognizant of the fact that we would make it so that there
well,
would
if
a
you
habitat.
want to make that argument, you're welcome to.
Well, what is the procedure for making that argument?
The procedure is to apply for a permit.
But we don't require a permit for a mosquito control abatement facility.
Okay.
What do you?
Isn't that true?
Yeah. So you have a choice between making out a consent order or simply citing us for a violation.
Yeah.
And if you cite us for a violation, another procedure kicks in.
Yeah,
Right.
then we can respond that this is, that this is a mosquito abatement facility approved by the
can.
city engineer.
You know, if you like contention, you've got it all set up where there's going to be years of it. Years of it. The way I'm telling you, the slant you're taking, it's fine with me. Because once I send a notice of violation or do my thing, I'll be out of it. But I'm telling you, what you're setting up to do, you may think you're right, and you may be right. But I'm telling you, you're setting yourselves up for years of contention.
Well, it's been years of damage to this property from the storms, and years of work we've put into trying to put life back into this area with.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen a guy up on a D10 bulldozer improving habitat for the
understand.
wildlife. Now he
Well,
thinks
there
that's
have
what
been-
he's doing.
Okay, there have
I
been no
understand. It's not
bulldozers
up to the
in here.
individual. That's why you have
There
state laws.
has been no heavy
It
equipment
doesn't make
in
any
here.
difference. It cannot be left up to the individual to determine what is improvement and what is not.
Essentially,
That
it
is
comes
why
down
the
to
permitting process is in
individual
place.
human
Also,
beings.
individual property owners
It comes
no
down to
longer.
state having the legal authority to review any projects taking place in waters of the
Except
state.
for those that are exempt.
Except for those exempt. And to
Right.
be exempt, you fill out an application. You send it into the Jacksonville office, and they issue you an exemption letter. You do not determine what's exempt.
Okay, fine. Could you send
what
us
we're
the
trying to find out.
I'll
forms so
send you
that
the
we can
forms.
apply for an exemption?
Absolutely.
Fine, good. That will be fine.
Certainly.
Be quite happy to
But
do that.
it's going to have to be done with a consent order. The consent order is going to say that within X number of days, you have to apply, and that because I have nothing to show that you're going to do it, except a verbal agreement. It's going to have to be a legal agreement.
That we will apply for an exemption.
Right.
Fine.
And or permit, which will mean you'll have to send in a permit form. If the exemption is denied, then you'll have to do the same thing over again for a permit.
Fine.
All right?
Yeah.
All right, I'll put together a consent order. Have it to you.
But
It'll
if you're
say
going to
that
have a consent order, you are going to enumerate the specific criteria
going to
that
enumerate
cause
more
you...
thing than you can even begin to think of.
Okay,
It will
fine.
be a legally binding document, which if you don't carry out your part of any of it, then it will immediately go to Office of General Counsel, and it will go into circuit court.
After we sign it.
Yeah. And then if you don't sign it within, it'll say you have to sign this. When you get it, the front page is going to say,
Yeah.
sign this and return it within 7 days.
Or
If you don't sign it and return it within 7 days, then the other side kicks in, and we go to court.
You cite us for a violation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then you demonstrate what the issues in violation are, right?
All I have to do is document it.
Okay. And how are you going to
Well,
document
I've
it?
already documented it with photographs.
I see. Okay.
And all that will go to our attorneys.
Where did you take the photographs from?
From all along here with a telephoto lens.
Okay. Good.
Good.
They're pretty pictures.
Hmm?
They're pretty pictures.
Well, I hope they come out. It's awfully dark.
Well, don't worry about it. You can come back on a sunny day.
And okay, well, this thing will probably take 2 weeks to get to you.
Oh, and the other thing that you mailed on Friday hasn't come yet either.
Yeah, it's the bureaucratic log jam. It has to
Had
go
to
to
Jackson.
has to go to Jacksonville to be signed by
Oh, I
Ernie
see.
Fry
I see.
to
Okay.
make sure that none of his buddies get the wrong thing in the mail.
I see.
So let me ask you a hypothetical question. If we applied for a permit, this is strictly hypothetical, and we were turned down, would we be then ordered to remove everything from the jurisdiction?
Yeah,
That is, physically take this,
Yeah.
these pieces of limestone,
put it out, take it out.
which would, of course,
How far?
Outside our jurisdiction.
Which is where?
which
Up
has
on
to be
site.
determined.
It's essentially along the line of these hickory trees here. Anything above that, you've got really narrow jurisdiction over here. Probably right at the base of that line right there it runs.
Because taking these out would create,
We understand
problems.
that,
Yeah,
see? We
yeah.
understand that.
at any point, does somebody in DER say, well, it's going to cause more damage?
I can
And more
assure
pollution.
you that the people who come and do the permitting reports are extremely thorough. Maddenly thorough.
Yeah.
From your perspective or ours?
From my
I
perspective,
see.
maddenly thorough. And they're
Okay.
also very good. I can tell you right now, if you go this exemption route, in my opinion, you're almost certainly going to be denied. I don't think it's an exempt activity, from my experience. I spoke with Jacksonville people about the permittability of such activities, and they indicated to me that these activities are permittable.
If we meet certain criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah. For instance, the neighbors sign on to permit the activity at this, out of the other design level or whatever.
Well, I've seen cases, there's one on Lake Santa Fe where a local businessman wanted to put in a huge 800-foot long dock through a wetland. All the neighbors fought it because they thought he was going to split up the lots and sell them, was just using the dock as a sales point. Well, the guy got the permit anyway. But under a specific condition in the permit is that he essentially can't split up the land. It can't be used for any commercial activities or he's in violation. So, I mean, something along that line might happen here where certain specific conditions were put in.
Well, the lots have
To-
already
to-
been defined.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean,
there's no-
to address, say, a neighbor's concern.
I mean,
All permits come with a list of general conditions that apply to all projects. Then there are specific conditions put in to address specific issues.
Well,
having to do with it.
the neighbors may find that they are in limbo.
They may.
You know, until Chris Bird came to me the other day and said he wanted, as he put it, the crap taken out of the creek, or he would call DER.
Well, he did, and once
Yeah.
he does, I have to respond. I have to respond.
Yeah. But 10 years down the line, somebody could object to one lock, and the same thing would happen. So,
Afraid so.
yeah. So we might as well get this settled.
Yeah.
Get it out of the way.
My recommendation would be that you go straight for permit. If you really
Which
want to
would
get
you-
it over with and don't
Yeah.
want it to drag on. I mean, they may, hey, you might get the exemption, but I don't think it's going to
Well,
You have to hire an engineer to
Yeah.
come in and look at the system. And,
mosquito control structures are generally municipal.
yes,
act-
generally.
Yeah, generally.
Well, see, the problem here is that the utility has this is a utility right-of-way right
Uh-huh.
here. 20 feet.
Yeah.
And it was on that basis that they put the storm sewer in. The problem was that they ran the storm sewer
On
over
clay.
a lot for which they did not have an easement.
and they put it on top of clay.
Yeah.
We found 2x4s. on top
Had
of
clay underneath the pipe.
Well, I guess
So
I bet
the
you
water
heard
goes-
about the 150,000 gallons that went in down the road there.
No. From where?
From 150,000
Oh.
gallons of raw sewage.
Okay.
Oh, no, this is stormwater.
Well, that's what caused that.
Oh.
Every time they build a new building on the university,
Yeah.
more storm water goes into these creeks. The
Yeah.
storm water ate out the manhole and the whole thing tumbles in.
Every new parking lot adds to the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Is there any provision in the DER permitting process for what you would call structures to stop silt from
Sure.
running downstream?
Sure, people do it all the time.
Yeah.
Usually it's done with riprap.
Yeah.
With a filter fabric under it, so that the water goes through
And not the
and the soil gets
Yeah.
trapped.
Yeah.
Do it all the time. We're not out to stop people from protecting their property. Definitely not. But we want to have an oversight capability in anything that's done in these streams, because you can understand
Yeah.
what one person says they're doing for the environment, da da da. Hey, you wouldn't want to see some of this stuff, I guarantee you.
You don't mean this, but somebody else's
Well,
stuff.
yeah. And the fact of the matter is, this cannot be handled. Despite what my opinion is,
Mhm.
it can't be handled any differently than any other activity.
Okay.
Wait, is somebody going to come out and assay the water?
Not in that sense. They'll do essentially a biological report, but
Okay.
they won't be taking samples or anything.
Okay.
See, what we're trying to figure out is how or why DER would, excluding any unhappiness on the part of an adjacent landowner, how this, as a water of the state, is affected adversely by our.
It may not be.
Yeah.
It
So-
may be. All we want an oversight to determine in advance through issuance of your plans, what you want to do, whether or not, looking at all things across the board. I mean, the permitters do hundreds and hundreds of permits every year. So they have some basis of comparison as to whether what you're doing is consistent with,
Have you ever seen anyone who's done anything like this?
no, except for farmers, and they're exempt.
That is, you've never seen anyone, say, in what is essentially an urban-suburban environment
No,
who has attempted
no.
to do this.
Except for municipalities putting in stuff, and they always apply for permits.
Yeah. And you might, one day for your own interest, if you've never done so, take a walk along Rattlesnake Branch.
I've been down in it.
And you've seen the
Yeah.
messes there.
Oh yeah,
And the trees that come down.
absolutely.
The water washes out around the banks of the trees
I had a complaint a few years ago. A guy was draining his swimming pool
into it. Oh yeah, well, these people across the street routinely drain their swimming pool out into the street, run a hose out into the gutter, and down goes the chlorinated water. That happens all over
Yeah.
town. Do you ever get the feeling that it's like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic as it's sinking?
No doubt about it, especially on the big ones.
Yeah.
The big ones get fixed.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you mean the big ones get fixed?
You mean politically, or
Yeah.
You know.
All of agriculture is exempt from all our rules. All of silviculture is exempt from our rules, and they're no doubt about it. They're the two biggest destroyers of the natural environment there is because they got expensive lobbyists.
Well, the
It
most
even
expensive lobby in the state is the people who drive automobiles.
It even extends into